Chapter 101. Great Strength Cultivation Method 1. The proctors from the Talent Fostering Bureau and the various academies worked fast. Su Yu finished his conversation with them in the morning and received his rewards in the afternoon. The merit points were directly transferred to his merit card. He had obtained quite a lot of merit points this time. There were 10 merit points for placing first in each examination, and 20 merit points from Huang Sheng. The original Great Strength Cultivation Method and 3 drops of Source Qi liquid had been delivered to him as well. As for the rewards from the academy, he would only receive them after entering. That was not surprising. If Su Yu suddenly changed his mind and decided to join a different academy, the Great Xia Cultural Research Academy wouldn't be stupid enough to still give him his rewards. Things like merit points couldn't be measured with money. The official value of each point wasn't too high, but they weren't something one could easily buy or obtain. Its price in the black market was also extremely high, and one could easily get into trouble buying from the black market. If the calculation was made in accordance with the price of blood essence, a single point was basically worth around $30,000. But following the price of Source Qi liquid, it would be worth around $20,000 instead. In short, Su Yu had earned rewards worth more than $1 million in value from the 2 examinations. Previously, things were very tight for him financially. He was finally relieved of that trouble. He was now decently well off. Including the 2 merit points he had previously, he now had 42 merit points, 3 drops of Source Qi liquid, 2 Myriad race original texts, one was given by Chen Hao's father, and 2 willpower texts. In truth, the willpower text written by Bai Feng had almost turned into a regular text. After all, that was only something Bai Feng had written as an afterthought. He didn't even use blood essence as ink when writing. Thus, his willpower would naturally not stay in the text for long. After almost 2 months, the source opening codex had lost most of its power. Fortunately, Su Yu no longer needed it much after reaching the 9th stage. Apart from those, he also had a weapon and several ordinary copies of cultivation methods. In terms of cash, he had less than $30,000. As for his blood essence, he had used them all for himself and his blood character. Sigh. Even with the rewards in hand, Su Yu still felt somewhat regretful. If it wasn't for Zhou Tianqi, he would have 20 more merit points. Also, Bureau Head Sun's decision to not pay him off to cover up the incident involving the bone scroll also made Su Yu feel like he had suffered a disastrous loss. If they had not refused to pay him up, he would have been able to earn over 100 merit points this time, breaking his personal record and earning the equivalent of what one would get from killing a Skysoar cultivator. With a sigh, Su Yu decided to stop thinking about the merit points he could have earned. All the newly accepted students would enter the various academies on the 1st of August. There were more than a month left before then. During the remaining time, Su Yu needed to draw out a plan. He was already a 9th stage source opening cultivator. His willpower had also reached 20% full. His next goal was to reach the Great Strength and further increase his willpower. To reach the Great Strength realm, I need to open more acupoints. But prior to that, I need to pick a suitable Great Strength cultivation method for myself. There were many Great Strength cultivation methods in existence, and each was different from the other. Generally, one could judge the quality of a cultivation method through the number of additional acupoints it could open. For example, Su Yu had a Divine Skywing technique, Great Strength chapter on him. This method would allow him to open 72 acupoints on top of his source opening acupoints. It was a top-tier, profound-grade cultivation method. He also knew the Great Strength art taught in the military. It opened 36 additional acupoints and was a top-tier yellow-grade cultivation method. The cultivation method would determine the acupoints one needed to open or in the 9th stage source opening realm to enter the Great Strength realm. The Great Strength acupoints would be opened gradually through the 9 stages of the realm. A cultivation method with 36 acupoints was a top-tier yellow-grade method. One with 72 acupoints was a top-tier profound-grade method, and one with 108 acupoints was a top-tier earth-grade method. Simply put, a lower-tier yellow-grade cultivation method might also provide only 9 additional acupoints, but such a Great Strength cultivator was too weak. Unless one was really untalented in cultivation, most humans would cultivate the Great Strength art and opened 36 acupoints. That signified that with this method, one needed to open 4 extra acupoints during the 9th stage source opening realm to reach the 1st stage great strength realm. What cultivation method should I practice? It was time for Su Yu to make his choice. He had basically finished opening his basic 9 acupoints. His next choice would affect his cultivation in the great strength realm and beyond. I definitely can't practice the divine skywing technique since it's a cult cultivation method. I might get myself killed as a cult member if I learn it. So am I supposed to practice the great strength art? As a hot-blooded young man, Su Yu was naturally not reconciled to practicing a weaker method. That method gave him only 36 acupoints. That was too little for him. Sure, it was a well-known fact that a lot of top experts cultivated only yellow or profound grade methods. But that was because they lived during a different time. The environment back then did not allow them to be picky. In this era, if he practiced a weak method, he would have a weak combat strength. It was different for the military. They had no choice but to use a yellow-grade method as the military was filled with people from different backgrounds. A cultivation method that was too complicated might not work for some of them. The great strength art was still a relatively strong method, despite its simplicity, so it was natural for them to use it as their main cultivation method. But if Su Yu practiced the great strength art, he would be very weak during the great strength realm. Of course, as a trainee cultural researcher, he did not need to care too much about that. He would have a chance to reforge his body during the Skysoar realm. He could always switch to a better cultivation method during that time, but he did not wish to fall behind during the great strength realm. His willpower was already weaker than those freaks. If he was also weaker as a warrior, then he would have no way of competing against them. I need to decide on a cultivation method. At the very least, I need to get a profound grade method. After reaching the decision, he moved on. There was no rush, as he had just reached the 9th stage. He still needed to consolidate his cultivation base. In anyone, Liu Wenyan was probably the only person who could give him proper advice in terms of cultivation methods. As for Bai Feng, Su Yu had no idea what that person was doing at the moment. Even if he wanted to contact Bai Feng, he couldn't. Sure, he could ask for Liu Wenyan to connect them, but he did not intend to do so. There was no need for him to look too eager to be Bai Feng's student on the 27th. Nanyuan Secondary School. After the 2 examinations, the school took a month-long holiday. As a result, it was very quiet inside the school. At the end of June, the weather was slowly turning warm. Wearing a button-up shirt, Su Yu walked alone in a path framed by massive trees. It was rare for the school to be this quiet. The results of the examinations would be released on the 1st of July, and from the 2nd of July onwards, the students would start registering for the academies they wished to join. The registration would be finished by the 5th of July and the academies would finish accepting students by the 10th of July. Around the 15th of July, the students would receive their acceptance letters. With these letters in hand, they could start reporting to their respective academies. The capital needed to work at a high efficiency to complete all that within such a short time frame. After all, there were a lot more students there than a small place like Nanyuan, with only thousands of examinees. Nanyuan was too small. Even their neighboring cities would have tens of thousands of examinees. As for the capital, they had more than 100,000 examinees. There were around 800,000 examinees in the entire Great Xia. There were a lot of students. There were also a lot of academies for these students to join. Not many students of Nanyuan would be accepted into the War and Cultural Research Academies. Furthermore, most of these accepted students would only be accepted into ordinary War and Cultural Research Academies. Very few could be accepted into the Great Xia War Academy and the Great Xia Cultural Research Academy. As the result had yet to be released, the secondary school was still quite empty today. Su Yu did not mind. He had already been accepted. He only needed to report to the academy. After a while, he reached Liu Wenyan's house. He knocked on the door and it opened. Liu Wenyan was preparing a meal in the kitchen. When Su Yu saw that, he walked in and said, "Instructor, let me help you. Are you here to get a free meal?" Liu Wenyan laughed. Without looking back, he said, "You've timed your arrival to coincide with my mealtime. Looks like you have learned to grab any free benefit you could get." Su Yu awkwardly said, "That's not the case, instructor. I was only afraid that you would wake up late during the holiday. Nonsense." Liu Wenyan laughed again. He said, Come help me clean the vegetables. After your father left, you have probably been eating crude meals. As a single man, you need some cooking skills if you want to live a quality life. Suyu scratched his head and laughed without saying anything else. He entered the kitchen and started helping Liu Wenyan clean the vegetables. While Liu Wenyan cooked, he asked, "Why are you here? Do you have any questions?" "Not really. I'm thinking of picking a great strength cultivation method, so I'm looking for a suggestion." Great strength cultivation method. Liu Wenyan blanked out slightly before saying, "I almost forgot you're at the 9th stage already. That was fast." He had nearly forgotten that. Suyu's progress as a warrior was too fast. His physical cultivation had advanced way faster than even his willpower cultivation. If it wasn't for his divine characters, Liu Wenyan would have suspected that Suyu had more talent as a warrior than a cultural researcher. Liu Wenyan sighed and said, "I told you to not cultivate with blood essence, but you were stubborn. Have you hidden some other special abilities of that blood character from me? For example, it could give you some source chi after absorbing blood essence." Suyu hesitated and sank into silence. Liu Wenyan was definitely aware that he had purchased a lot of blood essence. He had grown rapidly while he always carried the aura of blood essence on him. An ordinary person would not be able to sense that aura, but Liu Wenyan could, evidently. Liu Wenyan was wondering if his fast growth was related to the blood character. Before forming the blood character, Suyu had purchased some blood essence as well. But he hadn't purchased as much back then. He had also been using research as an excuse for those purchases. Only after forming his divine character did he start purchasing blood essence in bulk. In fact, he had spent nearly all his merit points on those purchases. It wasn't surprising that Liu Wenyan would find out about his purchases. There exists divine characters capable of assisting with physical cultivation. That is not a big secret. Liu Wenyan did not mind the silence. He said, "But you can't rely too much on your divine character. This is the best time for you to get to know your body. If you rely on your divine character too much, you will be in trouble during the Sky Soar realm. Without a good understanding and control over your body, you won't even be able to forge your body." Suyu hurriedly asked, "Instructor, will I ruin my future relying on my divine character?" "It's not that serious," said Liu Wenyan. "But if you don't know your own body well enough, your progress at the Sky Soar realm will be very slow due to the lack of the comprehension that you should have gained in the earlier stages." Suyu breathed out in relief. Fortunately, that would not apply to him. He wasn't even relying on his divine character. He was only using the book in his mind to absorb source chi way earlier than he was supposed to. He was still confident in his control over his body. He wouldn't have been able to grasp the lightning source blade otherwise. Liu Wenyan said nothing else. He tried to imagine himself in a similar position. Would he be able to resist using such a divine character to help with his physical cultivation? Absorbing blood essence to gain source chi? That was probably a dream ability for many people. That was especially true for cultural researchers who mainly focused on willpower cultivation. Doing physical cultivation on top of that would waste a lot of their time. If a divine character could help with their physical cultivation, many of them wouldn't hesitate to do so. Since Suyu's main path was going to be willpower cultivation, Liu Wenyan did not need to worry about him too much. Having reached that conclusion, Liu Wenyan returned to the previous topic. There are many great strength cultivation methods in existence. Any random store can recommend over 100 methods to you, but the great strength art is the most commonly practiced method. It has moderate difficulty and is very suitable for the masses. That is actually a cultivation method created by a bunch of old fellows. Thus, you will have a clear path of advancement in future realms as well. For example, the infinite strength art and the Sky Soar art for the subsequent realms. This is the advantage of selecting this method, Suyu asked. So should I practice the great strength art? Chapter 102. Great strength cultivation, method 2. Be patient. Liu Wenyan continued cooking as he said, "Like I said, that is a method meant for the masses. These people aren't too talented and lack resources. For these people, even the possibility of advancement is worthy of celebration. They don't care about the strength of the method. With this method, if you're fast, you can reach the Sky Soar realm in about 20 years. For them, this is better than those geniuses who practiced a better method only to end up stuck in the great strength realm for 20 years. Even the weakest Sky Soar cultivator was not someone a great strength cultivator could contend against. Thus, the choice of cultivation speed or strength was an issue that bothered many cultivators. Liu Wenyan smiled. Is faster advancement better, or is greater strength at the same realm better? The answer for this question is different for everyone. You can't expect someone less talented to practice a powerful method. That will only cause him to be stuck at the great strength realm for life. But you also can't expect a genius to practice a weak cultivation method. Sure, the advancement speed is fast, but the genius will no longer be considered a genius anymore due to their weak combat strength. Also, the higher the cultivation level, the more obvious the effect of a better cultivation method is. With this great strength art, even if you reach the Mountain Sea realm, a Skyzor cultivator with a stronger cultivation method might still be able to defeat you. In that case, you would be a useless Mountain Sea cultivator. The upper limit of your strength would be too low. Liu Wenyan looked at Suyu and said, "Do you want to grow faster, or do you want to have a higher upper limit?" He was a genius. If he practiced a weak cultivation method, he could quickly reach the Skyzor, or even the Mountain Sea realm. But what next? Nothing. There was no future for him if he chose that path. He would be constrained by his upper limit. He would only enjoy some glory during his early stages of cultivation, before turning into a piece of garbage during the latter stages. That was not what he wanted for himself. Of course, a stronger cultivation method might not necessarily be better. For example, a heaven-grade cultivation method will not always be better than an earth-grade cultivation method. You also need to take growth into consideration. For example, the Skypierce art, a great strength cultivation method with 144 acupoints. It is among the best heaven-grade cultivation methods in existence. By opening 144 acupoints during the 9th stage Great Strength realm, you will have powerful and plentiful source chi. Even 9th stage infinite strength cultivators who had cultivated the Great Strength art might not be your match. This is a method that will truly allow you to fight above your class. As a great strength cultivator, you will be able to slay a powerful infinite strength cultivator. But there is no follow-up for that cultivation method, as the infinite strength version of it does not exist. You might be stuck at the great strength realm for life. In that case, is this cultivation method good or bad? Suyu shook his head. Without a follow-up, one can only rely on luck and create a path forward. But that is not something a mere great strength cultivator can do. But why didn't the invincible experts create a follow-up for that method? What stupid question is that? They have their own cultivation methods, inheritances, and techniques they are familiar with. Why waste their time and energy on something unrelated to them? It's not like they don't have other heaven-grade cultivation methods. Why insist on practicing this method? There are a lot of such incomplete methods in the Myriad realms. In the early stages, they are incredible. In the latter stages, they will be worthless. You won't be able to keep creating a new method whenever you advance. Nobody has enough time to do that. There are several inheritances that can allow you to continue until even the invincible realm in the capital. Let me list them out for you. Firstly, Great Zia King's Sky Sundering Countless Saber Su. You blanked out. Was his instructor being serious here? Why are you looking at me like that? Liu Wenyan glared at Su Yu. It's not like I'm the one who had come up with that name. The Great Zia King was the one. When he was at the Mountain Sea realm, he named it Sky Sundering 20 Sabers. When he broke through, he changed its name to Sky Sundering 28 Sabers. After a while, he added more sabers and continued changing the name. Liu Wenyan spoke with a helpless tone. When he reached the invincible realm, he continued the same habit. At first, the Academy would change their official records each time he changed the name. But that fellow would change the name once every few years. The Academy eventually decided to keep things simple and leave it at Sky Sundering Countless Saber. Suyu was completely dumbstruck. What the hell? Don't be too shocked. The Great Zia King is not the only one who would behave in such an erratic manner. It's actually very common for experts to behave like that. During the early years of the Anping calendar, those experts had very few cultivation methods at their disposal. Many of their methods were actually plundered from the Myriad races. As they improved these methods, the names kept changing as well. In fact, the Great Zia King isn't even the worst offender of bad names. At least he keeps his names consistent. Some people have completely different names, such as renaming a dragon slaying art to a dog slaughtering art the next day after killing a dog. With a wry face, Liu Wenyan said, If you find some inconsistencies when you're reading around, don't think that it's a mistake. For example, according to the Anping history, the great Zhou king had slayed a divine with his Black Wind Ravager cultivation method. But in Great Zhou history, it is said that the great Zhou king had killed a divine with his celestial return art. That's not an error on the part of the historian's Liu Wenyan side. That's because the name of the cultivation method had actually been changed. Additionally, 2 divines had been killed, not 1. Don't get confused when you're reading. The records are very messy, to the point even the individuals described in the history books are confused themselves, wondering if they had actually given their cultivation methods those names back then. Su Yu was dumbstruck. What? So the great Zhou king would actually look at a history book in confusion, wondering why did he give his cultivation method such an embarrassing name back then. That was an interesting thought. Su Yu felt like laughing, and even Liu Wenyan was holding back his laughter. He continued his explanation. Let's go back to the topic. The capital has the sky sundering countless saber. Secondly, the war god art, published by the War Shrine. This is the main cultivation method of the war academies. Thirdly, the Myriad text sutra, published by the knowledge-seeking realm. That is the main cultivation method of the cultural research academies. And, of course, just because these cultivation methods can be cultivated all the way to the invincible realm, does not mean that you will definitely reach that realm with these methods. Invincible experts wouldn't have been so rare otherwise, and we would have subjugated the myriad races long ago. In cultivation, you have to rely on yourself, your luck, your talent, your fortitude, and your effort. Liu Wenyan's face turned solemn as he said, "For now, those are the 3 publicly available cultivation methods that can be cultivated all the way to the invincible realm. Of course, I'm talking about the capital when I say publicly available. Naturally, there are definitely some unknown cultivation methods around as well. For example, private inheritances. Some families might have their own top experts creating private cultivation methods for them. But nobody knows if these cultivation methods are reliable unless they are created by someone in the invincible realm. Instructor, should I be cultivating the Myriad text sutra then?" Liu Wenyan shook his head. "You need to reach the Sky Soar realm to practice that method. It does not have the great strength and infinite strength versions. After all, cultural researchers will only start physical cultivation at the Sky Soar realm. I suggest you practice the War God art instead. It can open 72 acupoints during the great strength realm." Su Yu was somewhat disappointed. He actually wanted to practice a stronger cultivation method, such as an Earth grade method that can open 108 acupoints. Of course, he still believed that his mentor meant well. While he was thinking, Liu Wenyan smiled and said, "There are 2 versions to the War God art, the normal version and the genius version. The normal version is mostly provided to the normal students. As for the geniuses in the war academies, they will mostly be provided with the other version that can open 108 acupoints. In fact, that also applies to those in the cultural research academies. As educators, each student should be taught in accordance with their ability. If we standardize everything, we will be the same as the military. What's the point of opening all these academies then?" Su Yu's eyes lit up as he said. Instructor Liu Wenyan interrupted him. "It's good that you're confident in yourself. You're already a 9th stage source opening cultivator. Your growth has been rapid. I also think that you should cultivate something harder, even with your divine character helping you. A harder method will slow you down and let you strengthen your understanding of the lower realms. However, you don't have access to the advanced version." At this point, the dish Liu Wenyan was cooking was basically ruined. He casually scooped the charred dish into a plate. That was clearly going to be Su Yu's lunch. "I can still get the ordinary version for you, but I have no way of getting the advanced version. If you want it, get it with your merit points. Also, you will only be able to get a mundane copy. A willpower text copy will be much more expensive." Su Yu asked, "Where can I get it? Can we do it here?" "No. You can only do it in an academy. Don't worry. It's available in the Cultural Research Academy as well. No matter how arrogant the war academies are, they still need the Cultural Research Academies to provide them with willpower texts of the War God art. and only cultural researchers who have cultivated the war god art can do so. Thus, there are a decent number of experts who have cultivated the war god art in the cultural research academies. In fact, the cultural research academies have the largest scope of education. You can find the cultivators of all sorts of cultivation methods in these academies. That is the only way we can keep producing so many different willpower texts. Some cultural researchers are even willing to practice about a dozen cultivation methods, just so they can write more willpower texts and earn more money. That works? Su Yu was astonished. Won't the cultivation methods conflict with each other? Definitely. But if you make your choices correctly, they might not conflict with each other. However, only cultural researchers with no future will do that. For the war god art, the ordinary and advanced versions are quite similar. The first 72 acupoints are basically the same. For the advanced version, you will have to open 36 more acupoints on top of the original 72. Therefore, you can first practice the ordinary version for now, and get an advanced version when you have the chance. With the ordinary version, you only need to open 8 acupoints to step into the great strength realm. With the advanced version, you need 12 acupoints. Therefore, open 8 acupoints first. When you reach the academy, get an advanced version and open the remaining 4 acupoints before breaking through. You won't be able to change your choice after breaking through. This is why a lot of little fellows are stubbornly staying at the 9th stage source opening realm. Be aware that a lot of them are actually waiting to enter the academy and get a better cultivation method before breaking through. Su Yu nodded. He had been wondering about that. Why did so many students from the capital stop at the 9th stage source opening realm? He had thought that they couldn't break through, but it seemed like they were simply waiting for something better. Some of those who have actually broken through have either chosen the ordinary version or been taught the advanced version by someone in their family. Su Yu asked in astonishment. Are there no restrictions when it comes to teaching these cultivation methods to others? There are, but that's not an issue some merit points can't solve, said Liu Wenyan. If you have someone in your family with a high enough merit tier, you won't have any issue teaching some cultivation methods to your descendants. Su Yu asked, Instructor, will the advanced version be expensive to get? It's fine. You can get the great strength version for about 100 merit points. Su Yu was stunned. Liu Wenyan continued. That's right. That's what you will be using your rewarded merit points for. Do you think the academy will be rewarding you with merit points for nothing? You understand, after joining, you will return everything they give you in no time. You can only set your roots down and slowly grow in the academy. After all, no high-tier student would be willing to practice an ordinary cultivation method. An advanced cultivation method requires merit points. And would you look at that? You have been rewarded 100 merit points for joining the academy. How convenient. You can give them the points back for an advanced cultivation method. Su Yu was dumbfounded. These academies were really shrewd. He wouldn't even think of that possibility without Liu Wenyan's reminder. No wonder everyone claimed that you would never have enough merit points in an academy. You can always choose to stay with an ordinary version, Liu Wenyan teased. Why don't you keep the points and just practice the ordinary version? Su Yu had a sullen face. He wanted to be a genius as well. He wanted to stand above his peers. Therefore, he had no choice. Otherwise, he would be weaker than those 9th stage great strength cultivators from the war academies even after reaching the same cultivation level himself. Instructor, what if I buy through a private channel? Will that be cheaper? That's illegal. Liu Wenyan erased that thought from his mind. Like I said, only someone with a high merit tier can teach the method to their descendants. The number of people they can teach is also fixed. It is illegal to go above the limit. Do you think such an easy loophole will remain? Su Yu finally gave up. He hadn't even received the promised 100 merit points yet, and all of them were already gone. Liu Wenyan comforted him. Don't worry. Don't you still have a lot of merit points from the examination rewards? They will last you a long time. I'll get a copy of the ordinary war god art for you later. Come see me after 2 days. As for a willpower text version, don't even think of it. I have never practiced that method. I can't write it. By now, he was already aware of how tiring it was for someone to write one. Chapter 103. The Myriad race arrives one after the talk with Liu Wenyan about cultivation methods. Su Yu was relieved. The advanced war god art would allow him to open 108 acupoints. That was basically as good as a top-tier Earth-grade cultivation method. It was actually a very good choice. As for a heaven-grade cultivation method, Su Yu did not see himself getting one. It was too difficult to both obtain and cultivate. Trying to cultivate one would only slow down his growth. An Earth-grade cultivation method was good enough for him. If I want to practice the advanced war god art, I'll need to open 12 acupoints to reach the first stage, Great Strength Realm. There were 9 stages in the Great Strength Realm. Thus, after opening 12 acupoints during the 9th stage Source Opening Realm, he could directly reach the peak of first stage, Great Strength Realm. However, only the first 8 acupoints would be available for the ordinary version. Su Yu contemplated while eating the charred food. After a while, he looked up and said, "Instructor, how about the infinite strength version? Do I need to purchase it as well?" "Of course." Liu Wenyan nonchalantly replied, "At the Great Strength Realm, you will be allowed to purchase the infinite strength version. At the infinite strength realm, you can purchase the Skisor version. In short, you can get the version 1 realm higher. But naturally, the higher the realm, the more strict the application process would be, and the more expensive it would be. To prevent the Myriad race cult from getting it? I guess so. The human race has been able to rise not through the work of only a few experts. Rather, we have relied on the hard work of countless humans. Look at the Al-Heaven battlefield. There are countless soldiers there. If we rely on only a few experts, how are we supposed to defend our borders? If nobody is willing to contribute, the human race will never be a strong race. When someone purchases a cultivation method with merit points, the creator of the cultivation method will receive a share of the profit. Generally, they can receive about 30% of it. In fact, the richest humans aren't those super experts. Rather, the creators of the various cultivation methods are the richest. All of them stand to earn a terrifying number of merit points just from their yearly dividends alone. Of course, there is also the option of purchasing the rights for a cultivation method. For example, the rights of the Great Strength art have been purchased by the military. I wonder if the creator ever regrets selling the rights initially. This was merely a yellow-grade cultivation method, something that was not rare at all. For a super expert, that was nothing. But after selling the rights to it, the expert found that the military has turned the method into their standard cultivation method. The entire humanity started cultivating the method. If the expert had kept the rights instead, they could probably earn billions of merit points just charging 1 merit point per cultivator. And this was a profit that could be earned generation after generation. Even Su Yu felt bad for the creator of the Great Strength art. He couldn't help but to ask, how much did the military pay for the rights? I don't know. The rights were bought many years ago. At that time, the merit point system wasn't even in place yet. I heard that the military bought the rights with only a Skisor demon beast corpse. Liu Wenyan wasn't sure. That was ancient history. All people knew nowadays were some unfounded rumors from back then. The corpse of a Skisor demon beast that might not even be from a particularly powerful race. Just with that, the creator had lost the rights to the cultivation method. What a loss, Su Yu asked. How about the follow-up methods? Did the military buy the rights for all of them? I think so. Of course, I'm not very sure either. As for the Mountain Sea version, that might have been created long after the Great Strength version. The creator might still be holding onto the rights of that. Liu Wenyan was a brand new Skisor cultivator as well. He didn't know too much about all that. But when he saw how interested Su Yu seemed to be, he smiled and asked, "Are you thinking of giving it a try? After all, cultural researchers are very good at creating cultivation methods. In fact, cultural researchers have created all sorts of cultivation methods over the years. Unfortunately, many of the cultivation methods come with all sorts of flaws as well, so they didn't go anywhere. For example, there are cultivation methods that can cause a cultivator to grow a tail, an extra hand, or even scales after practicing them. After all, most of our points of reference come from the cultivation methods of the Myriad races, and these are only the less severe cases where people haven't been killed practicing them." Liu Wenyan sighed. Just from the fact that cultural researchers are also the creators of cultivation methods, the human race needs to thank us. We have created many cultivation methods, Some are useful, some are not. Nevertheless, the majority of the cultivation methods used by humanity nowadays are creations of cultural researchers. Too many of us have perished in the process of creating new cultivation methods. Generation after generation of cultural researchers have worked tirelessly to improve our cultivation methods. From the very beginning, when humanity has only been cultivating randomly, where luck plays a greater role than hard work, until now, where we have proper paths of progression, cultural researchers have played a great role in that. From back then, where countless people died cultivating, to nowadays, where barely anyone would die from cultivation deviation, the contribution of cultural researchers can't be forgotten. Perhaps they had never even been to the battlefield, but nobody could deny that they had contributed massively to humanity. Su Yu had a longing look on his face as he said, "If I can create a cultivation method suitable for the masses in the future, such as an earth-grade method, not harder to cultivate than the great strength art, I can probably stop worrying about money for life." Many people have the same idea. Liu Wenyan smiled. But reality is harsh. It has been so many years. If a more suitable cultivation method can really be created so easily, the basic cultivation methods of humanity would have changed long ago. Su Yu did not continue the topic. That was merely a dream of his. Shortly after, he asked doubtfully, "Instructor, is the Myriad race cult really not able to get their hands on these basic cultivation methods?" "Not really. Some of the more powerful races probably also have a copy of them. At the very least, they should have the versions before the Mountain Sea realm. But that doesn't matter. We also have their cultivation methods. We only need to keep improving. If that's the case, why are we still being charged? Like I said, you guys need to be taught to only reap what you sow," Liu Wenyan berated. "Don't have the mentality of wanting something to drop from the sky for you. Also, for cultivation methods of higher realms, your merit tier will also be taken into consideration. When buying cultivation methods," Liu Wenyan sneered and said, "the other races have actually slaughtered a lot of different races to obtain our cultivation methods. For example, the divines have been sending their spies to us to steal our cultivation methods. In order to earn enough contribution points, they won't hesitate to get their hands dirty and kill some of our enemies for us. That's also the same for the other races. Each improvement of a cultivation method would bring us great benefits." Liu Wenyan flashed a wide smile and said, "Let me tell you a secret that is not a secret. About 80 years ago, a spy from the Myriad race cult managed to enter the Cultural Research Academy. In order to get the Mountain Sea version of the Myriad text sutra, that fellow went to the Alhaven battlefield and killed dozens of divines and devils for us. He then purchased the Myriad text sutra he wanted. However, that was an early version of the method, so it has a lot of problems. Furthermore, it was only suitable for human cultivation. Even humans found it troublesome to cultivate. When the method was sent back to the Azure Dragon race, several of their top cultural researchers tried modifying that method, but all of them ended up exploding and dying when trying the method." Liu Wenyan clicked his tongue and said, "That created such a big ruckus that humanity immediately learned of it. Not only did they discover a high-level spy, they also learned of the problems of that cultivation method. Generally, not even unsuitable cultivation methods will cause top experts to explode and die when cultivating. That means that there is a big problem with the method. We ended up revising the method multiple times. At times, we would deliberately leak some cultivation methods that we're unsure of. We managed to kill quite a lot of enemies with our leaked cultivation methods." Su Yu found the entire affair amusing, but Su Yu thought of an entirely different point. When Liu Wenyan was done speaking, Su Yu asked solemnly, "Many of our own cultural researchers had died studying cultivation methods as well, right?" "Yeah," Liu Wenyan nodded. "It's very normal for people to scheme against each other. Each year there would be some humans dying, turning mad, or exploding from studying the cultivation methods of the other races. But we have no choice. Our research must continue. All the other races are progressing. If we don't do so as well, how are we supposed to keep up with our enemies?" The conversation ended on that heavy note. The two resumed their meal in silence. When they were done eating, Su Yu prepared to leave. After some thought, Liu Wenyan said, "Bai Feng has encountered some trouble recently. You can decide for yourself whether you still want him as your teacher." I understand. After taking his leave from Liu Wenyan, Su Yu started heading back home. Apart from physical cultivation, he could also cultivate his willpower. How? By studying Myriad race original texts. A willpower of about 20 to 49% full were required to study a great strength Myriad race original text. But he had only reached 20% not long ago, so he could only study an incomplete copy for now, and he had one such incomplete copy in his possession. He had obtained the copy from Bai Feng back then. When he first studied it, he hadn't been able to see anything, as he had been immediately sent into a daze. Cultural researchers at his level could study these incomplete original texts to strengthen their willpower. The contest of willpower between the cultivator and the text was helpful for the growth of willpower, and at the mental tempering stage, more avenues of improvement would unlock. Chapter 104. The Myriad race arrives too back home. Su Yu took out the bone fragment with the incomplete original text on it. He did not know which race this copy came from. Neither did he know if this was a martial technique or a cultivation method. Perhaps it was only an unimportant document. Bai Feng had not told him anything about the bone fragment, and Su Yu had not asked either. This incomplete copy would mainly be used to strengthen his willpower. He was never meant to analyze the contents of the bone fragment. Su Yu had been busy increasing his cultivation level and practicing his martial technique recently. Thus, he hadn't had much time to study the bone fragment. Since he had yet to receive the war god art, he had some free time on his hands. Thus, he decided to put more focus on his willpower. It wouldn't do if he still couldn't study original texts even after entering the academy. That would be a waste of time and opportunities. After wrapping his willpower around the bone fragment, he sank into a state of concentration. This is in his trance-like state he saw some indistinct characters. After studying them for a bit, Su Yu concluded that these characters belonged to the Berserk ape race. This was a relatively common race in the Alhaven battlefield. They were extremely ferocious in combat. There were several well-known elite armies below the Skasor realm on the Alhaven battlefield. The Berserk ape race's army was one of them. At only the Great Strength realm, they fought like they were actively trying to throw their lives away. A human army of similar size and strength would generally suffer a rapid defeat after encountering them. It wasn't because the humans were weak. Rather, the Berserk apes were simply too crazy. When they fought, they seemed to be in a permanently enraged state. Of course, they would also stupidly charge ahead even after stumbling into an ambush. Thus one could easily defeat them by setting up ambushes in advance. Because of that, the Berserk ape race had been suffering disastrous losses on the battlefield. The Berserk ape race was the subordinate race of one of the divine races. As for which divine race it was, Su Yu had no idea. The divine race was actually a general term for the humanoid life forms living in the divine realm. In truth, there were various different races in the divine realm. The divine Skywing race was one such race. Su Yu stopped thinking about all that. The Berserk ape language was one of the languages he knew. Su Yu wasn't sure if he was reading the characters right. This was the first time he had tried reading an original text. In the past, he had only studied from regular copies. After a while, he started feeling some drain on his willpower. However, he ignored the exhaustion as there was practically no danger reading these incomplete copies. The session would automatically end after his willpower reached its limit. The Berserk apes have powerful arms. The arm slash is a common bare-handed technique of theirs slowly. Su Yu gained some understanding. He was looking at a martial technique, a technique that cultivated the acupoints in the arms to strengthen both arms. In his mind, he could even see a massive ape who was in the midst of cultivation. And at that moment, an understanding dawned on him. This is a willpower text of a different race. He realized that he seemed to have been mistaken about something before. He had been told about Myriad race original texts during the lesson with Bai Feng back then. He eventually obtained his first divine character from Bai Feng's source opening codex. From then on, he started to believe in the misconception that only humans could write willpower texts. But he now realized that the willpower texts of foreign race cultivation methods must have been obtained from the other races as well. In short, these original texts are basically willpower texts of non-human races. This is an incomplete copy. That's why I can't get a clear look. But since it's an original text, it must have been stored for quite a long time. Su Yu sank into thought. The willpower text he received from Bai Feng was written relatively recently, yet it had nearly turned into a regular copy by now. Was it a problem of the materials, or was it a problem of Bai Feng's strength? He had received both the incomplete copy and Bai Feng's source opening codex at the same time. Furthermore, it was unknown how long the incomplete copy had been with Bai Feng before it was given away. But the willpower in it remained until now. Did that mean that the author of this original text was a berserk ape that was much stronger than Bai Feng? In other words, the Myriad race original copies are actually consumable items. Su Yu was alarmed as he came to another realization. This thing would basically be worthless the moment the willpower in it fully dispersed. At that point, he shook his head and returned his focus on his willpower cultivation. He would come to learn in the future that after studying this incomplete arm/copy for a while, the copy would eventually disintegrate and break apart. Arm/opening the acupoints of both arms. A special martial technique focusing on both arms. With this technique, a berserk ape can open 16 acupoints in each arm. With 32 acupoints opened in total, this is a top-tier yellow-grade martial technique. Generally, cultivation methods and martial techniques were meant to complement each other. If a cultivation method required one to open 36 acupoints, then the accompanying martial technique would probably require one to open 30 acupoints, which would also overlap with the 36 acupoints opened by the cultivation method. Thus, one could cultivate the accompanying martial technique without opening additional acupoints. Of course, not all martial techniques will reuse the same acupoints. In that situation, one would need to open additional acupoints. I wonder what's the accompanying cultivation method for the lightning source blade. If I cultivate the war god art and its acupoints are too different from the lightning source blade, I'll probably have to open more acupoints to use the lightning source blade effectively. Do I need merit points to get war god art's accompanying martial technique? The mere thought of spending merit points caused Su Yu to feel gloomy. Since the lightning source blade requires 40 acupoints to be opened in total, its accompanying cultivation method is definitely above the low-tier profound grade. But since the lightning source blade does not open a lot of acupoints, the accompanying cultivation method will probably not be an earth grade method without a doubt. Su Yu would not cultivate lightning source blade's accompanying cultivation method. This method would definitely not be as good as the war god art. But it hadn't been easy for him to grasp the first move of the lightning source blade. It would be a pity to give up on it now. Forget it. At worst, I'll just open some extra acupoints for the lightning source blade. In any case, it only requires 40 acupoints. Maybe some of them will overlap. If a lot of the acupoints overlapped, he might only be required to open a few extra acupoints. More and more thoughts appeared in Su Yu's mind, while his concentration on the bone fragment dropped. Next, his willpower pulsed as he was kicked out of the trance-like state. He smiled helplessly. Sure enough, he should focus when reading instead of letting his mind drift all over the place. Some of the arm acupoints of this arm slash seem to overlap with lightning source blade's acupoints. This would be quite helpful for me. Humans and apes were different, but they still had similarities in terms of acupoints. If the berserk ape race could open 32 arm acupoints as a human, he might be able to find the corresponding acupoints as well. He would then be able to modify this technique for human use. In fact, this was one of the jobs of cultural researchers. Bai Feng had once warned him to not study these willpower texts too many times per day. However, Su Yu did not take the warning seriously. That was because his sea of willpower had shown no indication that it was being strained to its limit. During the examinations, he felt like his willpower had been completely drained, but he only needed a night of sleep to be as good as new. Thus, he reached the conclusion that all his exertions thus far had yet to push him to his limit. Su Yu did not mind being ejected from the trance-like state once. He started a new session. As he studied the text, his willpower clashed against the text's willpower. This time, he did not let his mind drift apart and focused on the text. Through the clashes of willpower, he strengthened his willpower. They would grow through the clashes of willpower. Shortly after, Su Yu was ejected from the trance-like state again. After resting for half an hour, he resumed. This incomplete arm slash had already brought him a lot of surprises. He even considered opening the arm acupoints and seeing if he could really strengthen his arms doing so. Of course, he was aware of the dangers, so he wouldn't really act on that thought. The current him simply did not have the qualifications and resources to modify a foreign martial technique. He had too little knowledge and knew too little about human acupoints. I'm still too ignorant. I don't even know the total acupoints and structure of a human body. Trying to modify a martial technique would be the same as suicide. He came to understand his weakness even more. He simply knew too little. The knowledge available in an academy was very important for him. Upon entering the academy, he needed to learn seriously and become a top student. While Su Yu was cultivating, somewhere else in the human realm, the sky split. Then a massive floating fort appeared out of the crack in the sky. Numerous heads peeked out of the fort, and all these heads seemed to be different from each other. Some looked around curiously, while some looked completely cautious. A short while later, a fully armed army appeared and surrounded the fort. An expert stepped forth from the army and coldly said, "Principal Wan, stick to the fixed route in the human realm. If the foreigners in the fort dare to take a single step out or deviate from the approved route, all of you will be treated as enemies and killed without mercy. Great Xia Cultural Research Academy will be taking full responsibility should anything untoward happen." Several experts appeared from within the fort. They were all floating in the air. In front of them all was Wan Tiansheng. Around Wan Tiansheng were several sky-soar experts from the foreign races. The general of the army was not intimidated. He looked at the foreign experts coldly and said, "You are all here as Dao protectors. You will only be allowed to stay in the Great Xia Cultural Research Academy. For all of you, stepping out of the academy without permission is punishable by death. Fighting without permission is punishable by death. Spying on the secrets of humanity is punishable by death. To return to your own realm, you will need the papers of both the Great Xia Cultural Research Academy and the Great Xia Prefectural Government. Without such papers, any human is allowed to kill you outside the academy." After saying all that, the general looked at Wan Tiansheng and coldly said, "Principal Wan, don't do anything stupid. If anything happens, you will bear the responsibility for it." Wan Tiansheng smiled and said in an unhurried manner, "Don't worry, I know what to do. I've reminded them repeatedly before coming. If anyone is arrogant enough to ignore our rules, they deserve to die. All the resources they spent to come will go to waste. Feel free to kill any rule breakers." The moment he said that, an ox-headed expert beside him said, "Leva Doli," Wan Tiansheng said, "Speak in human language. This is the human realm. Nobody will translate for you." The ox-headed individual unhappily shifted to human language. "General, Principal Wan promised that there will be some restrictions placed on us Dao protectors, but our students will not receive the same restrictions. They will be allowed to roam the human realm." "Why is that changing now?" the general said with a frosty tone. "That's Wan Tiansheng's promise. Ask him. If the foreign students dare to leave the academy without permission, they will be killed without mercy." Wan Tiansheng coughed before saying, "I did not give you that promise. I only said that your students will be allowed to participate in some missions with the permission of the academy. Do not twist my words. For example, your students can take part in our Myriad race cult extermination missions. What do you think, General?" The general glanced at him coldly before saying, "Just know your limits. Principal Wan, interactions are allowed, but I don't want to see certain things happening. That is only natural." Wan Tiansheng smiled. "If anything happens, you don't even need to do anything. With Prefect Xia around, unless a Myriad race king comes personally, who can escape the prefect's blade? Escort them to Great Xia." The cold general ignored Wan Tiansheng. With one command, over 1,000 soldiers surrounded the fort. Nominally, they were on an escort mission, but in practice, they were here to keep watch over these foreigners. Wan Tiansheng did not mind. The foreign experts around him were unhappy, but none of them said anything. Before coming, they were already aware that they would be living under someone else's roof. In such a situation, they needed to be patient. Inside the fort, some of the foreign students started looking at the surrounding soldiers. Some looked fearful, some looked arrogant, and some looked indifferent. There were even some with fawning looks on their faces. These were mostly the students from the minor races. Wan Tiansheng did not mind the actions of the soldiers. He looked at the experts around him and said, "Everyone, I hope you can follow our rules at the academy. As you can see, I'm shouldering a lot of pressure for the sake of this project. The moment anything improper happens, blood will flow." "Don't worry, Principal Wan," promised a middle-aged foreigner who looked like a human with a tail. "We also hope to exchange knowledge with the humans, grow together and coexist peacefully. Our Fox King already reminded us before that we shouldn't make trouble for you." "That's good to hear." Wan Tiansheng did not remark on that. He smiled and said, "Humans wish to have a good relationship with the various races as well. The divines and devils are oppressive. Today, they are targeting us humans. Tomorrow, they might target your races instead. Only by working hand in hand will we be able to resist the divines and devils." None of the others said anything. The divines and devils were too strong for them to offend. In fact, they couldn't afford to offend the humans either. If it wasn't for the fact that the human realm lacked the suppression toward the other races, resulting in the numerous enemies and the massive pressure on them, the Great Xia Cultural Research Academy would never have opened its doors to them. The foreign experts did not say anything and started sensing the realm suppression. Before long, they smiled. Sure enough, the human realm did not have any suppression on them. Here they could use all their strength. It was no wonder that the divines and devils had their eyes on the human realm. This was a much easier realm to attack than the others. Wan Tiansheng ignored them and returned to the fort. The fort started moving toward Great Xia. Around them, a strict formation of soldiers escorted them. There were also top experts monitoring them in secret. Not even these foreign experts could be sure whether these hidden experts were invincible experts or not. Chapter 105. Dragon's Lair, Wan Su family's residence. Ever since Suyu had discovered that he could study Myriad race original texts, he had transformed into a shut-in again. He spent all his time staying at home reading and practicing the lightning source blade. On the 29th of June, he took a trip to his school. The war god technique had arrived. Liu Wenyan had notified him to pick it up. Liu Wenyan's home. Suyu had a book in hand and a joyful expression on his face. This was the basic cultivation method of the military, the war god technique. It was a technique published by the War Shrine, one of the holy lands of humanity. The War Shrine was a mysterious place. There were mentions of this place in some ancient records, but nobody knew its actual location and how it functioned. Suyu only knew that the various prefectures of the human realm generally acted independent of each other, but during critical moments, the War Shrine and knowledge-seeking realm would show up and lead the whole of humanity against the enemies of humanity. There were countless experts in these holy lands of humanity. There were very few mentions of these holy lands in the ancient records. According to the rumors, they even had plenty of super experts at Great Xia King's level in there. These holy lands held the true trump cards of humanity. Looking at Suyu's joyful expression, Liu Wenyan said with a regretful tone, "It's too bad I've never practiced the war god technique. I can't write its willpower text for you. Without a willpower text, this might be a very difficult cultivation method for you to cultivate." Suyu did not mind. He smiled and said, "Instructor, I'll only have some trouble opening acupoints without a willpower text. It will be fine. I just need to be patient and put some time into it. It's good that you can think that way. Bai Feng should have been the one to help you with this. However, you've yet to join the academy, so there is the possibility of you getting a different teacher instead. There is no need to influence your decision-making for the sake of one willpower text. Although I've never practiced it, I still know the war god technique quite well. Since this is your first time seeing it, let me give you a rundown." "Thank you, instructor." Suyu was very happy to hear that. After all, even with a book in hand, one might not be able to learn the contents of the book. With a teacher, even if the teacher had not practiced the method before, Liu Wenyan was still an experienced cultural researcher of over 70 years old. A guidance from a person like this would be much more helpful than him diving in blindly. After about an hour, Suyu was starting to gain an initial understanding on the first stage of the war god technique. For the basic war god technique, he needed to open 72 acupoints in total. With 9 stages in the Great Strength realm, he needed to open 8 acupoints per stage. In truth, he could already be considered a great strength cultivator the moment he opened his first acupoint, but at the same time, he was also still not a true great strength cultivator. That was because without opening and linking all 8 acupoints, he would not have the strength of a proper great strength cultivator. Only by linking the 8 acupoints into a circuit would his source chi start flowing through them. At that time, he would be able to strengthen his body with blood essence and gain the combat strength of a great strength cultivator. Thus, someone would only be officially considered a great strength cultivator after opening all required acupoints for the first stage. And by opening 16 acupoints, he would reach the second stage. By the time he opened 72 acupoints, he would be a 9th stage great strength cultivator. But even after opening 8 acupoints, I can't break through. I need to wait for the advanced version and open 4 more acupoints before doing so. Otherwise, I'll be stuck with the regular version during the Great Strength realm. As for the Lightning Source Blade, I need to open 12 acupoints to start practicing the second move. Apart from the 8 basic source opening acupoints, I only need to open 3 more acupoints. 2 of them overlap with the required acupoints of War God technique. Thus, I only need 1 extra acupoint to learn the second move. Su Yu left Liu Wenyan's home and started making plans for his cultivation. During the next month, he would be very busy. He needed to open acupoints and study original texts. 1 month was actually very short. While walking, he suddenly thought of something and went to the resource department instead. There, he purchased 12 drops of iron-winged bird blood essence. With that purchase, he had 30 merit points left. 12 drops of blood essence and 3 drops of source chi liquid. I should have enough to open 8 acupoints, right? No. I need to open 1 more for the saber technique, so 9 in total. Su Yu himself was unsure if he could do all that in a month. He finally realized how expensive physical cultivation was. Pure cultural researchers sure had it easier. They only needed to read. Of course, the Myriad race original texts were not cheap either. Furthermore, these texts were consumables with limited shelf life. He had checked with Liu Wenyan earlier. His mentor confirmed that these original texts were indeed consumables. As for how long they could last, it would depend on how frequent he studied them. That bone fragment of his could probably last about a dozen more times before breaking apart. Where did you go so early in the morning? Chen Hao was visiting again. This fellow had vanished for 2 days after the examination. Nobody knew where he went to party and celebrate the end of the examination. When Su Yu saw that fellow waiting in front of his apartment block, he said, "During this month-long holiday, cultivate at my place. You will provide food and do my laundry. I'll help you open your acupoints." Chen Hao was stunned for a long while before finally saying with a sullen face, I don't have any pocket money anymore. I spent all of them. Cut the crap. Are you doing this or not? If not, feel free to leave. Su Yu couldn't be bothered to persuade Chen Hao. He was going to focus on cultivating next, and the source chi around him would definitely be thick, thanks to his source chi liquid. His home would have a much better environment than other places, and yet this fellow had the gall to hesitate. Su Yu wouldn't have bothered giving him this offer if they weren't good friends. Chen Hao nodded gloomily and said, "How did you know that my father gave me more rewards? Don't tell me you were talking to him." Huh? Your father beat you up again? Su Yu was astonished. Chen Hao had performed decently in the examination. Why did his father beat him? The so-called reward Chen Hao mentioned was usually what he would get when his father tried to placate him after beating him up. You have no idea. Chen Hao grumbled and started explaining what happened. Su Yu raised his brow. He was quite surprised to learn about Chen Xingyi's thoughts. After a while he exhaled and said, "Your father is right. I haven't even reached the capital, but I'm already feeling a great pressure. That teacher of mine does not seem to be a regular person. He has been creating troubles all over the capital. Because of him, I've gotten myself a large number of enemies even before entering the capital. People like Zhou Tianqi and Wu Lan were only here because of Bai Feng. Without Bai Feng, they wouldn't have noticed a little genius of a small city like him. That so-called teacher of his had brought trouble to him. Of course the trouble wasn't that big, but he had still lost some merit points because of it." Chen Hao lowered his voice and said, You, this fellow sounds so troublesome. Why don't you ignore him and look for a different teacher? Su Yu shook his head but didn't say anything. He started climbing the stairs. Following behind him, Chen Hao asked curiously, "Was I wrong, you? You? You're both right and wrong. This is a lot more complicated than you've imagined. Firstly, Bai Feng is a genius of the Cultural Research Academy. He is also a teaching assistant. His teacher is an expert of the academy. If I go back on my words now, I'll offend him. Secondly, Instructor Liu has taught me for so many years. He is my mentor in the path of cultural research. He also has a close relationship with Bai Feng. In truth, I've already been labeled as someone from their faction. I have no choice but to join them. Nobody else will accept me. Even if they do, they probably won't teach me properly. Thirdly, the amount of troubles Bai Feng can get into far exceeds what a mere assistant researcher can get involved with. There is definitely something else about these troubles I'm not aware of. As a genius assistant researcher, sticking with him will bring me both danger and opportunity. Fourthly, even if there is internal turmoil in the academy, the scope of the conflicts will be limited. Things are not as bad as the rumors. The level of danger is actually lower, while the amount of opportunities there are even more plentiful. I am not someone with a cultural research inheritance. I don't have a powerful family as my backer. Bai Feng will be a good patron to have. Not only can I not refuse him, I must unwaveringly stand at his side. Whoever tries to steal me from him, I'll refuse. If I can do this for Bai Feng, this will be the equivalent of sending help during his moment of need. Sure, I can look for a more ordinary researcher to be my teacher and cultivate peacefully for a few years, but I will also miss out on a lot of opportunities because of that choice. Is that worth it, just for a few years of comfort? Su Yu shook his head. How? I'm not reconciled to that. I want to be strong as well. I want to grow rapidly. Risk and opportunity come hand in hand. This is basically an investment. Chen Hao only understood half of what Su Yu was trying to say. He scratched his head in confusion and said, "So will anything bad happen to you? Not for now." Since the Cultural Research Academy is still standing despite the stiff internal competition, the higher-ups clearly still have things under control. Furthermore, the prefect is still around. The academy is located in Great Xia. As long as the prefect is around, nothing too bad will happen. You really think a lot, Chen Hao praised with a look of worship. He would never think about all that. After all that was still too far away from his current life. Su Yu smiled. It's not that I think a lot, but you think too little. If people like us want to climb higher, we need to grab any opportunity available to us, and an opportunity will not drop from the sky. Even if it does, you need to grab it to actually get it. Chen Hao scratched his head in confusion again before saying, What should I do in the War Academy then? Just be yourself. You shouldn't try to scheme. You don't have any talent in that. Su Yu opened the door to his house and said, just focus on cultivating. Work hard and grow strong. That's all you need to do. With one of us in a Cultural Research Academy and the other in a War Academy, we can share our information and help each other. Some resources might only be available in the War Academy. If your level is high enough, you will be able to purchase them for me. Your father was right. At the capital, you'll have to spend less time with me. If anyone asks, just pretend like we're regular ex-schoolmates. That way, nobody will care about us as okay. Got it. Chen Hao nodded. He didn't understand exactly what Su Yu's plan was, but he still somewhat got what Su Yu was trying to say. As a 5th stage source opening cultivator, you're too weak. Try to open your eye acupoints during this month and reach the 7th stage. With that cultivation, you won't be at the bottom of the pack in the academy. Instead, you'll be at the middle of the pack. That way, you might be able to gain more opportunities. 7th stage Chen Hao was not confident. Can I do it? It's very hard to open acupoints. You can. Us, Nenyuan locals, lack source qi. With source qi you can cultivate with half the effort, and twice the result. During this month, work hard, and you'll have the chance to break through. Su Yu turned around to face Chen Hao and patted his shoulder before solemnly saying, Hao, if you're not strong enough, I won't be able to rely on you. I won't even have a backup plan if I mess up. You need to grow strong and do well in the War Academy. If one day I find myself eliminated by the stiff competition in the Cultural Research Academy, I can still go look for you in the War Academy." Chen Hao was starting to get nervous. Why does the capital feel as dangerous as a dragon's lair?" "It is a dragon's lair. At the very least, that's the case for me," Su Yu seriously said. "I am going to compete against the geniuses, the chosen sons of heaven, and the freaks of this era. It is a dragon's lair for me. At times you need to stand up and compete. Otherwise you won't get anything. No matter how big of a genius you are, if you don't show your talent and value, nobody will care about you." Chen Hao nodded. "Okay, I'll cultivate hard." "Good. When I reach the Cultural Research Academy, I'll try to get some willpower texts that can aid in physical cultivation for you as well." So you guessed that he would be able to get those willpower texts easier in the Cultural Research Academy. Without willpower texts, Chen Hao's cultivation speed would be very slow. With willpower texts, he would be able to give Chen Hao a boost. Halfway through the video. Enjoying the story? Subscribe for more. Chapter 106. Dragon's Lair. Tu Suyu resumed his life as a shut-in. He would read in the morning, cultivate in the afternoon, and practice the lightning source blade in the evening. His dreams would also visit him every now and then. Unlike in the past, he was actually looking forward to his dreams nowadays. In the dreams, he would be able to practice with his divine characters. In his dreams, he could use his divine characters the same way he used them during the test. His dreams were very realistic. Also, he could use divine characters without exhausting his willpower in his dreams. That would only increase his proficiency with them. On the 1st of July, the examination results were out. Su Yu placed first for both examinations. As for Chen Hao, he had gotten 220 marks including his bonus marks. In other words, he had obtained 60 marks for his hearing and liquid tasting test. That was actually a higher score than Su Yu's had expected, but it was also much lower than Chen Hao's own expectations. Chen Hao was very sad. He had been confident that he could get 60 marks for the hearing test and 30 marks for the liquid tasting test. Why did he get 30 less marks? Su Yu couldn't even be bothered to explain anything to him. Excluding his bonus marks, he would only have 190 marks in the examination. With that result, he could barely make it into the Great Xia War Academy. But Su Yu had already suggested that he join the Martial Dragon War Academy instead. Chen Hao didn't mind either way. His score of 220 marks was decent enough at the Martial Dragon War Academy. But at the Great Xia War Academy, that would be a pitifully low score, and he would also have the care of Old C in the Martial Dragon War Academy. Meanwhile, nobody in the Great Xia War Academy knew him. As someone at the bottom of the pack, he would not be qualified to receive any attention. On the 2nd of July, all the students started submitting their applications for the academies. Su Yu did not go out. Instead, he had Chen Hao do it for him. He only needed to submit an application for the Great Xia Cultural Research Academy. It didn't matter even if Chen Hao got the forms wrong. Su Yu was a special recruit. He could fix any mistake by contacting the Great Xia Cultural Research Academy. Thus, he couldn't be bothered to waste his time personally filling up the application forms. In the span of a few days, he had used a drop of Source Qi liquid and 3 drops of blood essence. Today, he aimed to open his first additional acupoint after the 9 basic acupoints. His time was too precious to be wasted on applying for the academy. The first 8 acupoints he needed to open were located at his left arm, forelimbs, torso, and head. These acupoints were mainly for the purpose of creating a basic circulation of Source Qi through his body, allowing him to absorb Source Qi and strengthen his body. As a 9th stage Source opening cultivator, he could already start actively absorbing Source Qi. However, there was no comparing his absorption speed with someone in the Great Strength realm. That was why he was still using the blood essence and his book for his cultivation. However, this method was no longer as effective on him. Inside Su Yu's room, a white glow flickered on Su Yu's left arm. The dim glow slowly turned into a bright glow. It only appeared for a split second before vanishing. That was an acupoint. He had opened the first acupoint on his left arm. He clenched his left fist and threw it out. Instantly, rumbles rang out in the room. The strength of his left arm had increased considerably. Even without the full circulation formed of 8 acupoints, His left arm had still grown much stronger. One additional acupoint meant that he could absorb and store more source chi in his body. So I'm technically now a great strength cultivator, in fact. If he was cultivating an inferior low-tier yellow-grade cultivation method, opening one acupoint would probably be enough to make him an official great strength cultivator. There were actually such great strength cultivators around. However, there were very few of them since low-tier yellow-grade cultivation methods were simply too terrible. These terrible cultivation methods were mostly only used by talentless cultivators with no background. For them, entering the great strength realm would still be better than staying in the source opening realm. At the very least, they would have greater physical strength and could perhaps do hard labor more effectively. And if they were lucky enough to enter the infinite strength realm, they would be able to get a relatively easy and high-paying job in a small city, even though they would be among the weakest infinite strength cultivators in existence. People like them weren't suited for the battlefield. Instead, they could only use their inflated cultivation to scare some ignorant people behind the front line. From the 29th until the 2nd, to open the first acupoint. This is quite fast, but it's too expensive. In truth, the basic acupoints were much harder to open than great strength acupoints. That was why Suyu's speed when opening the 8th and the 9th acupoints of the source opening was slower than the first great strength acupoint. If the great strength acupoints weren't easier to open, those academy students wouldn't have been able to reach the great strength realm, or even the infinite strength realm so quickly. If all acupoints were as hard to open as the source opening acupoints, each student would probably take decades to reach the next realm. I'm officially cultivating the war god technique now. My willpower has grown recently as well, but that bone fragment looks like it's not going to last much longer. As for the lightning source blade, I can only keep practicing the first move overall. He had improved considerably. He had even tried incorporating his lightning character with the lightning source blade to grant his attack more destructive power. One could say that he was growing every single day. There is less than a month left before the semester starts. I'll try to open at least 5 or 6 acupoints before then. I'll also try to push my willpower to 30% full. Suyu set a goal for himself. Since he had enough merit points to use and was in a phase of rapid growth, he was not interested to join any of the Windcatcher Department missions. He would have a much easier time earning merit points after becoming a proper great strength cultivator. He knew very well what his current priority should be. At the same time, Great Xia Cultural Research Academy. Inside an ancient, tall and iconic building, Bai Feng had his head lowered submissively as he said, "Respected elders, my teacher has researched the blood essence of the Myriad races for many years. We're at a critical point of our research. If we cancel the project now, this will be a great loss to humanity." Several old men were silently listening to him. After a while, one of them said, "Hong Tan has spent too much of his energy on this project over the years. He has neglected even his teaching duties in the academy, and often spent years at the Al-Haven battlefield. He has also stopped providing the academy with any resources. If everyone does so, how can the academy stay strong? How are those new students supposed to get the resources they require for cultivation? It's not like we haven't given you any time. The academy has been allocating funds without stopping to the project all these years. It has been decades. It's about time we put a stop to this," Bai Feng said. "We're really getting a result soon. This project is very important. The moment we succeed, us humans will be able to possess the racial abilities of the myriad races. We also believe that us humans have our very own racial abilities as well. Those abilities are simply undiscovered for now." "Bai Feng, we know Hong Tan's project better than you," said someone. "Extracting the blood essence of the myriad races and decoding the racial abilities of the myriad races." Hong Tan was not the first to research this subject. The knowledge-seeking realm has been researching the same subject as well. But reality proves that humans have no racial abilities. The racial abilities of the myriad races can't be transplanted either. Bai Feng frowned. Facts need to be proven with proof and demonstration, not empty words. "Sure, where's your proof?" The person who had spoken did not sound angry. Since Bai Feng demanded proof and demonstration, where was the result? Bai Feng's expression changed. After a while, he took out a drop of blood essence and swallowed it. With a roar, his body started growing. In the blink of an eye, he turned into a 7-meter-tall giant. He threw a punch out, creating loud rumbles in the entire building. In front of him, an old man caught his fist with one hand. The old man's face turned solemn as he asked, "Collision? Yes, the racial ability of the fire hog race collision." Then Bai Feng's body returned to normal. His clothes were torn up, but he did not care as he said, "There is already an early result for teachers' research, but we still need to perfect our findings. For now, we are only able to extract the racial abilities of the weaker races such as the fire hog race. But this is a start. I believe our progress will be significantly faster after this. It is only a matter of time before we can get the racial abilities of the divines and devils. Through this project, we can unlock the hidden racial abilities of humans, granting the human race an additional trump card. This will benefit the entire human race. We can't cancel the project." The higher-ups exchanged gazes with each other. One of them sighed and said, "Bai Feng, we saw your proof, but in all honesty, the knowledge-seeking realm has accomplished the same as well. You must have tried infinite strength and skysoar firehogs before as well. Did you succeed?" Bai Feng did not expect that the knowledge-seeking realm had accomplished the same. He frowned and said, "Although they have done the same, we might not share the same line of thought. We will walk our own path. We never know who will be the one to succeed in the end. But since we have proven that we haven't been conducting this research for nothing, why can't you give us more time?" The higher-ups conversed among themselves through voice transmission. Before long, one of them slowly said, "It's possible to give you more time, but the Academy will stop allocating funds to this project. Additionally, if you can't provide a breakthrough in 5 years, Hong Tan better return to his tasks and focus on teaching and accepting new students. He also needs to start exploring more secret grottos and contribute to the Academy. If he continues wasting his time on projects that do not benefit the Academy, we will have to remove his qualification as a senior researcher." The old man sternly said, "Bai Feng, humans are strong because of our regulations. Hong Tan has enjoyed the benefits of being a senior researcher of the Academy and Great Zia. However, he has failed to contribute to the Academy and the Prefecture. Is it fair that he continues enjoying all those benefits? Everyone has their own research. If everyone acts like him, how are we supposed to get our resources? Are we supposed to wait for the military to provide us with the resources?" Bai Feng clenched his teeth and said, "Okay, I'll pass that on to teacher. If we can't get any results in 5 years, we will give up on the Academy-provided research center and hand over a copy of our findings to the knowledge-seeking realm." "You're too stubborn," someone sighed. Clearly, Bai Feng meant that they would continue the research outside the Academy if the Academy stopped supporting them. The elders gave up on further persuasion. They believed that if Hong Tan had not wasted so much of his energy on this project, he would have broken through long ago. What a pity. Furthermore, Bai Feng seemed to have fallen into the same pit. They were worried that the project would delay Bai Feng's growth as well. Chapter 107. Too worried. One day after day passed. On the 15th of July, Su Yu received the acceptance letter from the Great Zia Cultural Research Academy. Back at his home, after taking a look at the letter, his good mood vanished. Registration fee of 10,000, lodging fee of 3,000, student uniform fee of 5,000, and book expenses of 2,000 for a total of $20,000. The lodging is adjustable. High-tier students can choose to live in the mental tempering garden for a fee of $50,000 per year or a payment of merit points. Su Yu turned gloomy the moment he saw the acceptance letter. He only had about $20,000 in cash for now, and the registration fee alone would cost $20,000. And to live in the mental tempering garden, he needed to pay $50,000. He would probably starve to death after paying the fees. "Dad, the money you left is really not enough." Su Yu was sighing again and again. His father had left too little money behind. If it wasn't for the fact that he was also quite good at making money, he would have been starved to death in the streets long ago. As for the so-called mental tempering garden, he was definitely not going to stay there for now. He didn't even have enough merit points to cultivate. He wouldn't waste them on lodging. This Great Zia Cultural Research Academy is too greedy. Su Yu cursed. They were charging fees for everything. Why did they want so much money? Around half a month had passed since he opened the first acupoint of the war god art. He had used up almost all his blood essence. He had also used one more drop of source chi liquid since then. He only had one drop remaining in his possession. A drop of source chi liquid, 30 merit points, and slightly over $20,000 were all he had for now. He was going to enter the academy in half a month. He still needed to purchase more blood essence and source chi liquid. That would probably use up his remaining wealth. He was basically going to enter the capital with no money to his name. Sigh. Even a special recruit student like him had to pay his dues to enter the academy. Nevertheless, he was still going to receive his benefits. Things like 100 merit points and 2 entries into secret grottos weren't things money could buy. Not even tens of millions of dollars in cash would be enough to buy all that. The great Xia Cultural Research Academy had probably not expected a genius student to actually be troubled by something like registration fee. I need to take a trip to the school today and buy some blood essence and source chi liquid. He had been cultivating without caring about the cost during the past half a month. As a result, he had successfully opened the third acupoint of the war god art. He still needed some cultivation resources for the following half of month. Only by turning wealth into strength would he have the ability to earn more money when he arrived at the capital. He understood that very well. Resource Department. Su Yu was gnashing his teeth as he spoke with a gloomy tone. Teacher, 15 drops of iron-winged bird blood essence and 3 drops of source chi liquid. The iron-winged bird blood essence is available. But the source chi liquid, the teacher shook his head. Our school never keeps source chi liquid in our stock. The drop you purchased previously was actually loaned from Instructor Liu. He has not sent us any source chi liquid recently. Su Yu frowned. He had forgotten about that. The school did not have any sky-soar cultivators. No, Liu Wenyan was one, but he was busy cultivating as well. He probably didn't have the energy to provide more source chi liquid to the school. In the past, the people of Nanyuan could only purchase source chi liquid from the capital. Nanyuan was too small, and they had too few sky-soar cultivators. But buying at the capital wasn't an option since he needed the liquid immediately. After thinking about it, Su Yu asked, Teacher, if I go to the mayor's manor, can I buy some? The mayor was a sky-soar cultivator as well. In fact, the 3 drops of source chi liquid he got previously were provided by the mayor. You can if you have enough merit points, but they might not have any in stock. The teacher thought for a bit before saying, If you really want to buy some, I suggest you go to the Martial Dragon Guards. Their squad leader is a sky-soar cultivator as well. Since they have fewer members here, he might have some in stock. But I don't know their location. The teacher smiled. That's not a problem. Nanyuan has been making preparations to escort the new academy students to the capital. The Martial Dragon Guards will be involved. They will probably be at the mayor's manor making their plans. Maybe you can find squad leader Xia there. Thank you, teacher. After thanking the teacher, he bought 15 drops of blood essence. Apart from himself, his blood character needed the blood essence as well. Out of what he bought here, he would use 10 of them while his blood character would probably absorb at least 2 drops of them. The remaining blood essence would be kept for emergencies. Little lightning is so much better than little blood, Su Yu lamented. The blood character was too expensive to raise as it fed on blood essence. Meanwhile, the lightning character could be grown for free. If other cultural researchers learned of his thoughts, they would probably spit on him in anger. He could grow strong from absorbing blood essence. So what if he had to use a little bit of blood essence? That was basically the perfect divine character. Meanwhile, divine characters, like the lightning character that fed on willpower, were the actual headache-inducing characters for many cultural researchers. Because of these characters, many cultural researchers were constantly in a state of willpower exhaustion. But here was Su Yu, blaming the blood character for consuming blood essence. He was basically sitting on a treasure without knowing to appreciate it. Half an hour later, Nanyuan Mayor's manor. After waiting outside for a while, Su Yu finally saw Xia Bing. Sir Xia, Su Yu called out. Xia Bing turned around and asked in astonishment, You're looking for me? Sir Xia? Su Yu did not beat around the bush. The school is running out of source chi liquid. The teacher there suggested that I ask the martial dragon guards if you guys are selling any. Do you have any in stock? Source Chi Liquid. Xiaobing looked at Su Yu. A glow flashed in his eyes before he asked in astonishment, "You're already opening additional acupoints. That's so fast!" No wonder he needed more Source Chi Liquid. This kid was starting to open his additional acupoints. Su Yu answered with an honest and innocent expression. "Didn't the mayor reward me with some Source Chi Liquid recently? I tried opening more acupoints with them. It worked, but the Source Chi Liquid consumption is too high. I need more of them." "That's normal." Xiaobing nodded. "Nanyuan's Source Chi density is too low. Cultivating here has always been difficult, especially when it comes to opening acupoints. We have some, but we don't generally allow outsiders to buy our supply. I don't have the ability to grant you access to the military's trade network either. How about this? I have some personal stock. Just buy from me with some merit points." The martial dragon guards received their own supply of Source Chi Liquid from the capital, but that was considered military supply and could not be given to outsiders. However, Xiaobing could sell his personal supply to Su Yu. He was a sky soar cultivator, so he could form the Source Chi Liquid himself anyway. "Thank you, sir." Su Yu hurriedly thanked the squad leader. If it wasn't for Xiaobing, he probably wouldn't be able to get any Source Chi Liquid in Nanyuan. The mayor had already run out of supply. He knew as he had checked earlier. This was no big deal for Xiaobing. He asked, "Are you cultivating the war god art?" "Yeah." "That's quite a fast cultivation speed you have there," Xiaobing said. "Generally, the martial dragon guards focus on the war god art, while those from the devil subduing army focus on basic cultivation methods such as the great strength art. Since you cultivate the war god art, apart from the willpower texts in the Cultural Research Academy, you can also seek some guidance from the martial dragon guards or the war academy. The soldiers on duty definitely don't have the time to give you pointers, but those not on active duty are also veterans that have cultivated this method for many years. With their guidance, you can avoid many mistakes during your cultivation." "I understand. Thank you for the advice, sir. Don't mention it." Xiaobing started walking as he said, "The Source Chi Liquid is at my place. Come with me. After a while, you guys will set off to the capital. We will work with the city guards to escort you there." Su Yu couldn't resist asking, "Sir Xia, will the trip be dangerous?" "Somewhat," Xiaobing explained. "You should know that the Myriad race cult is now active in Great Xia. Although we have killed a lot of their people not long ago, we can't guarantee that there aren't more hiding around. You also need to watch out for the local demons. Those fellows are very troublesome too." Local demons. Su Yu had heard of those beings before, but he had never seen them. He curiously asked, "I've read about them before." Due to the thick Source Chi density in some areas, some local beasts in the human realm can turn into demons as well. But these demons are mostly weak. Will they actually attack humans? It depends. Xiaobing smiled. Their attacks are random. These demons always act in accordance with their instinct. In truth, that's because they are not very intelligent yet. Well, they will instinctively attack those who intrude upon their territory. We will suppress them each year, but new demons will also appear each year. Thus, you will need protection during your journey to the capital. After all, you all still don't have much combat strength. These demons are the reason journeys between cities are very inconvenient. Most merchant convoys will only move in a large group. Even so, many of these convoys will end up destroyed. These demons can never be fully cleared. We can only constantly suppress them to keep our roads safe. It's not like we can exterminate all beasts in existence." Su Yu nodded. That was true. They couldn't actually keep only humans alive within the human realm, Xiaobing continued. It's still not that bad on land, but if you're traveling by sea, things are even more troublesome. There are far greater numbers of aquatic beasts around, and they are much harder to suppress. Because of that, beast waves will appear every now and then from the seas. The Marine War Academy students are mostly sent to the Navy to deal with these aquatic beasts. The Marine War Academy was one of the academies Chen Hao had considered joining due to the lower entry requirements. These seas were not located within the Alheaven battlefield. Rather, they existed within the human realm. Sure, the human race as a whole had the strength to suppress these aquatic beasts as well. But that would be very troublesome to do. There were simply too many of them. Su Yu suspected that one of the reasons these beasts were not hunted to extinction was because these beasts served as convenient training tools and a source of resources. Otherwise, a few invincible experts would be enough to clear the seas of these beasts. Sir Zia, it won't be too dangerous for us, right? It should be fine, unless the Myriad race cult decides to launch a large-scale attack. But that's very unlikely to happen. Su Yu was worried about jinxing it, so he hurriedly said, Sir Zia, I think we better change the topic. Things that were almost impossible to happen could very well happen after someone claimed that they would not happen. As a well-read person, Su Yu knew very well that saying those words out loud could very well jinx the entire matter. Xia Bing understood what Su Yu was thinking. He smiled and stopped talking. Before long they arrived at a small building. Su Yu was astonished. Was this the base of Nanyuan's martial dragon guards? It was actually quite near his house. This is our base, Xia Longwu said knowingly. Don't worry, we will be moving to a different location soon. Since there aren't a lot of us in Nanyuan, we will move every few days. That way, the Myriad race cult won't be able to locate us. Wait here. I'll get your stuff inside. Su Yu did not dare to enter a military base without permission, so he obediently waited outside. After a while, Xia Bing returned and tossed a bottle over. Su Yu hurriedly caught the bottle before taking out his merit card. The merit card wasn't a creation of the Cultural Research Academies. Rather, it was created by the Scientific Research Academies. It might be called a card, but it was actually a small machine similar to a calculator. After connecting his card with Xia Bing's card and keying in the password, the screen on the card displayed that he had 15 merit points remaining. He transferred all of them to Xia Bing. When Xia Bing saw that, he couldn't resist asking, You already used up all your merit points. Did this kid eat merit points for breakfast or something? Xia Bing knew that this kid had earned 40 merit points during the examinations. He had also been awarded 10 merit points from the Windcatcher Department's mission. He also had his language certification merit points, and the 3 merit points from Chen Hao, Chapter 108. Too worried too in the past, Su Long would give his merit points to his comrades on the battlefield. This time, he was sending them to Su Yu instead. Perhaps Su Long was really worried that he would die on the battlefield, leaving his son without any money to even study. No wonder Xia Bing was so much warmer than before. It wasn't because of his talent, but it was because of his father's actions on the battlefield. He's only an infinite strength cultivator. Why is he creating so much trouble? Su Yu grumbled unhappily. He was upset. Xia Bing heard Su Yu's words, but he didn't say anything. Inwardly, he thought that this kid wasn't even a great strength cultivator yet. Why was he complaining about his father's cultivation level? But he could understand Su Yu's feelings. Thus, he was unbothered. He said, Su Yu, if you're sure you don't need your father's merit points, we won't transfer them to you. But you're going to the academy soon. I think you should take it. How many merit points are my father sending back? 53 merit points. Su Yu frowned. So many? Yes, that was a lot of merit points. To get that many points, Su Long needed to have a contribution equal to killing 5 early-stage infinite-strength enemies on the battlefield. He hadn't even been on the battlefield for long. Then again, as a 100-man commander, he naturally had additional rewards for his leadership. But no matter what, Su Yu was still worried after learning that his father had taken such a short time to earn 53 merit points. His father had been way too active. Did he challenge a late-stage infinite-strength enemy to a fight or something like that? I don't need them. He should keep them for his own cultivation. It's only 53 points. If you can contact my father, just tell him that I don't lack money. Tell him I have recently sold our house. Also tell him that I'm planning to find myself a rich wife in the capital and become a live-in son-in-law. Xia Bing looked at Su Yu speechlessly, but he understood Su Yu's mood. He smiled and said, Sure, I'll pass those words to him. I'll also let him know about your placement in the examinations. If you encounter any trouble in the capital, as long as it does not involve anything unlawful, you can ask for help from the local military. Yeah, I know. Xia Bing did not say anything else. He patted Su Yu's shoulder and said, Don't worry. Humanity is strong. He will be fine. Your father will be proud of you. Soldiers like us only wish to see our family living well and doing well for themselves. He was a middle-aged man with a wife and children as well. Unlike him, his family wasn't in anyone. Thus, he couldn't help but to get into the mentality of a father when he looked at Su Yu. There were a lot of soldiers in Great Xia. The biggest worry of these soldiers when fighting on the front line was that their descendants would grow up as a wastrel back home. Every one of them wanted to see their children growing into someone like Su Yu. Su Yu was in a heavy mood after the conversation with Xia Bing. Xia Bing was way too honest. He shouldn't have mentioned the matter of his father's injuries. Of course, knowing was always better than not knowing. But as a result, he now had even more things to worry about. His desire for strength had grown even more. He wondered if his father would end up participating in a major battle. Not to mention infinite strength cultivators. Even Skysoar cultivators could be put in danger. The cultivation speed of a 7th stage great strength iron-winged bird was starting to feel slow for him. The strength of the activated abilities are probably dependent on the strength of the blood essence used during the first activation. I still can't activate abilities that are too strong, but the ability at the level of 1st stage infinite strength realm or 9th stage great strength realm can also help with my cultivation speed. I should be able to barely resist the pressure of such activations. Su Yu sank into thought. He had encountered many beasts in his dreams before, and over the years he had identified a few of them. He was simply unsure if he was right. As for the few beasts that he was certain about, he had no access to their blood essence. I can be certain that ox-faced fish and looping turtles have appeared before, but I can't find their blood essence in anyone. Maybe I can get them in the capital. Previously, Su Yu was satisfied with activating the iron-winged birds page in his book. He believed that he shouldn't take risks and should advance in a safe and steady manner. After all, he had been progressing pretty quickly. But Xia Bing's words had caused him to be impatient again. He needed to activate even more pages to increase his cultivation speed. The speed of a 7th stage great strength page wasn't slow, but it was no longer enough to satisfy him. The issue is Myriad points and money. Su Yu was troubled. If he activated a page at the infinite strength realm, did that not mean that he would need to cultivate with the blood essence of infinite strength beasts? Infinite strength blood is a lot more expensive than great strength blood. Maybe I should accept Dad's merit points after all. Maybe if he grows slower, he won't get involved in any major battles. Su Yu shook his head. That was merely wishful thinking. On the battlefield, one would only die faster if one was weak. Of course, one wouldn't be much safer even if one was stronger, unless one was already an invincible expert. Dad, why must you make me worry about you? Su Yu sighed. His father was so troublesome. He was not a kid anymore. Why couldn't he stop making his family worry about him? Alhaven battlefield. In a certain military camp, Su Long was sighing to a bunch of subordinates. My kid is still young. He doesn't even know how to cook or wash his clothes. Sigh. I'm so worried about him. I wonder if he's starving without me there. He even got into the Great Xia Cultural Research Academy. His living expenses will grow even more. I wonder if he can get me a daughter-in-law from the academy. Commander, the news back home has yet to reach us. How are you so sure that he can enter the Great Xia Cultural Research Academy? The squad leader was joking, but Su Long glared at him unhappily and said, What question is that? If even my son can't get into the academy, nobody in Nanyuan can do it. His entry is guaranteed. I already sent my merit points back. With my merit points, that kid can probably reach the 7th stage great strength realm a few years later. Someone else teased. 7th stage great strength realm. Why don't you say that your kid will reach the Skysoar realm instead? Aren't all graduates of the Cultural Research Academy Skysoar cultivators? A few years later, he can join our army and take the position as the military cultural researcher. Even you have to address him as your superior officer when you see him. Su Long's face turned red as he said, What about Skysoar? Do you think it's impossible? My son is a genius. Maybe he won't be able to do it in a few years, but how about a decade or two? At that time, all of you will still be normal soldiers. When he comes here to become the military cultural researcher, all of you will have to act like his grandkids. You will have to address him as Sir Su when you see him. Ha 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 ha, you're right. At that time, we'll call you old Sir Su. Do you like that? Su Long glared at the person who had spoken. That person was a 100-man commander as well. Due to his higher cultivation level, that person had always acted arrogantly in front of Su Long. Su Long could only gnash his teeth and said, "Just you wait. When my son becomes a cultural researcher, I'll be sure to slap the face of every single one of you. You with the surname Liu, don't get too cocky. Your daughter won't be able to catch my son's eyes. Do you think a cultural researcher will have trouble getting a wife?" The other person snorted and said, "You old bastard has been aiming for my daughter since the beginning. Don't think I didn't notice how you indirectly tried to get my daughter as your son's wife. Dream on. My daughter will be taking the entrance exam next year, and she will definitely be able to enter the Great Xia War Academy. After a year or two, she'll be at the Great Strength Realm, or even the Infinite Strength Realm. Why don't you look in the mirror and ask yourself how many Cultural Research Academy students can actually make it to graduation?" Su Long was so furious that he wanted to fight this person. His son wouldn't be able to graduate from a Cultural Research Academy, says who? But then again, that did seem quite difficult. At that realization, Su Long felt somewhat discouraged. But he still stubbornly said, even if he can't graduate, he can still stay in the academy as an instructor. That will be a safe job, unlike your daughter who will spend her time on the front line like some barbarian. Su Long, are you asking for a fight? Bring it on. Do you think I'm scared? Since you dare to criticize my son, I'll beat you up and teach you a lesson for being so disrespectful. The two continued shouting at each other while the others merely watched on with amusement. It would be even better if the two ended up fighting. Things had been boring recently with the battlefield calming down. Nevertheless, this little episode had successfully formed an image of Su Yu in their hearts. The impression they got of him was of a weak scholar. Poor kid. He was definitely weak and frail and probably sickly as well. Just look at how worried old Su was about his son. The first thing he did after returning to the army was to ask around about the daughters of his comrades. He was clearly afraid that his frail son would fail to find a wife. Chapter 109. Departure 1 Nanyuan. In the blink of an eye, the 28th of July arrived. The day of departure. The new semester would start on the 1st of August, but since they needed to take into consideration the duration of the trip, the Nanyuan students needed to set off a few days in advance. During the past half of month, Su Yu had been madly cultivating without a care for the cost. Once again he displayed rapid growth. He had opened 6 acupoints in total. Only 5 of them were the War God Art acupoints. For the 8 acupoints of the first level of the War God Art, 3 overlapped with the second move of the Lightning Source Blade. One of the second move acupoints did not overlap with the War God Art acupoints. While cultivating the War God Art, Su Yu had ultimately decided to open the Lightning Source Blade acupoints first. Since he wasn't going to be advancing to the second level of the War God Art anytime soon, he thought that it was better to grasp the Lightning Source Blade's second move for now. Although that extra acupoint felt like a waste since a powerful martial technique at this level of cultivation was pointless for many students, any extra strength mattered to Su Yu as that signified that he would be able to protect himself better. He had completely exhausted his stock of Source Chi liquid, but he still had a few drops of blood essence left. He had 0 merit points while his $20,000 would be saved for the registration fee. He was basically going to be penniless in the capital. After packing up some clothes and his willpower texts, he prepared to leave with a saber in hand. At that moment, someone knocked on his door. Su Yu's ears moved as he walked up to the door. The door opened to reveal a happily smiling Chen Hao. "You, time to go. My father is downstairs. He's driving us to the school." The Nanyuan Secondary School was where they were supposed to gather. Chen Qingye was clearly reluctant to part with his son since he had taken the day off to personally drive him. Su Yu did not say anything and walked out with his small luggage. When Chen Hao saw how little Su Yu was taking, he couldn't help saying, "You, is this all you're taking with you? How many things am I supposed to take?" Su Yu shook his head. He turned around to look at his home, a sense of reluctance brimming in his heart. This was a place he had grown up at. He was going to leave it. He didn't know when would be the next time he could see this place again. This was a place he had stayed for many years with his father. A few months ago, his father left. Now it was his turn. The bustle of life of the past was gone from his home, replaced by peace and emptiness. You can't bear to part with your home." Chen Hao was still smiling widely. I don't feel that way at all. I can't wait to arrive at the capital. I heard it is a thriving metropolis. There are people and shops everywhere. There is a lot more food, drinks, clothes, training centers, and everything else there. Su Yu teased. And your father won't be there to beat you up. Chen Hao laughed awkwardly. But next his tone turned regretful as he said, Without my father beating me, I can no longer claim extra pocket money from him. Loser. That was the only word Su Yu had for him. This fellow seemed reluctant to part with his source of money. During the past half of month, Chen Hao had progressed in his cultivation as well. Unfortunately, he fell short of reaching the 7th stage. He was now a 6th stage source opening cultivator. The source opening realm was after all the realm where cultivators could only passively absorb source qi. The efficiency was too low. Even though Su Yu had invited Chen Hao over each time he used his source qi liquid, that fellow still failed to open his 7th acupoint. After one last look at his home, Su Yu exhaled lightly, closed the door and locked it. Downstairs, Chen Qingye was chatting with a few old men from the neighborhood. When he saw Su Yu coming down, he smiled and asked, Little Yu, are you not bringing more clothes with you? We'll get uniforms from the academy. I only need a few extra outfits. Su Yu also greeted the old men that had gathered downstairs. They were all in a melancholic mood. One of them said, in the blink of an eye, Little Yu is going to an academy. The little boy from back then is all grown up now. If your father is around, he will probably tear up today. Definitely. Sulong was both the father and the mother. It hasn't been easy for him to raise Little Yu alone. Su Yu smiled and said nothing. After a short farewell, Su Yu and Chen Hao got into the car. While driving to the school, Chen Qinghe reminded, Be careful during the trip to the capital. There are demon beasts in the wilderness. Don't roam around alone. Father, you said that a lot of times already. Chen Hao was getting impatient. His father had been nagging on him repeatedly. Chen Qinghe berated, Shut up. Do you want to get beaten? Listen to Little Yu on the way. Stick with the city guards and martial dragon guards. Don't roam off alone. At the capital, don't do anything stupid. I'll find some time to visit you there in the future. Why bother making the trip? It's so dangerous. Chen Hao hurriedly said, It's very dangerous to go alone. You should stay home. I'll come back when I have the chance. Shut up. Chen Qinghe berated, You don't have a brain. It would be even more dangerous for you to make the trip. Remember this. Every 3 months, Nanyuan organize an escort for you guys. Only come back with the escort. Don't move around by yourself. An alternative would be the Zia Trade Company. See if they have any traveling convoys. If there are, you can also follow the convoy. Everything is fine as long as you don't travel alone. Do you understand? Even though the army would constantly clear the roads, it still wasn't safe out there. Most students who had left for the capital would only return with a city escort or a trade convoy. Otherwise, their trip back might be their last trip in life. Of course, if one was strong enough, one wouldn't need to worry about all that. Su Yu felt somewhat envious listening to the conversation between the father and son. His father was on the battlefield. Otherwise, he would be around nagging at him as well. While arguing with his father, Chen Hao kept pulling at Su Yu with a look of excitement, showing off the saber in his hands. That was a standard-issue military saber. Su Yu could see that the saber was quite similar to the one he had. These were probably the same series of weapons. I have a proper cultivator's weapon as well, Chen Hao declared joyfully. At that moment, Chen Qingye berated, The saber is for your cultivation, not for you to show off. Chen Hao curled his lips, grumbling that it was no big deal to show off once in a while. Just look at his buddy, you. He had been showing off his saber a lot as well. Chen Hao had been envious for so many days and finally got one for himself. He naturally had to show it off as well. Su Yu merely smiled at the antics. Looking at the familiar streets through the window, he sank into a mood of melancholy. Before long, the car stopped. They had arrived at the Nanyuan Secondary School. Today, there were a lot of cars outside the school. However, there was no trace of smoke in the air. These cars were all powered by source qi instead of gas. A tiny bit of source qi would be enough to last these cars a long while. However, it still wasn't cheap to own a car. A normal car would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, while the source qi charges would cost them thousands of dollars per month. Previously, Su Lon had refused to buy one of these cars. For him, riding on a firehog would be much better than driving one of these. Su Yu never thought much about that before. But now, he agreed that riding a firehog would definitely look cooler than driving a car. Of course, he suspected that the bigger reason old Su didn't buy such a car was due to a lack of money. Numerous students could be seen heading toward the public square with their luggages in tow. Their parents followed behind them. Some were wiping their tears while some were nagging at their children. In this era, without strength, one would be lucky to be able to return once every few months. It was more likely that one would be stuck there for a few years before they could take their first trip home. Then again, they could always stay in touch with their communicators. The communication system of the human realm was quite developed. However, it wasn't cheap, as they would be charged several dollars per minute for a call connecting Nenyuan and the capital. For regular families, that would be a considerable amount of money. The communication stations outside the cities were subjected to frequent beast attacks. Thus, there were times when they wouldn't be able to make a call outside the city. The situation was still tolerable within the prefecture itself. After leaving the prefecture, the communicators would basically stop working. The large swathes of wilderness were filled with beasts and cult members. These cult members were more than happy to destroy these communication stations and ruin the connection between the various prefectures. Su Yu saw the principal, Liu Wenyan, his schoolmates, and teachers present. Liu Wenyan waved at him. After taking his leave from Chen Qingya, Su Yu rushed toward Liu Wenyan. Liu Wenyan looked at Su Yu with a nod. Not bad. You've opened a decent number of acupoints. Your willpower has grown considerably as well. Looks like you haven't been slacking off. He then gave Su Yu a slip of paper. If you encounter any trouble in the capital, call this number. Of course, don't call the number if it's nothing serious. I understand. Su Yu took the paper and memorized the number on it. He curiously asked, Instructor, whose number is this? Don't ask. Just mention my name when you call it. Liu Wenyan refused to elaborate. What was he supposed to say? That this number belonged to a certain special someone of his? That would be too embarrassing. Are you out of merit points? Su Yu nodded. He had 0 merit points left. Don't look at me. I won't be able to give you any. I barely have enough for myself. If you don't have merit points, then you'll have to think of a solution. It won't be hard for you to get some merit points when you formally become someone's student in the academy. I know you don't want to give up on your physical cultivation. I won't stop you, but remember your balance and don't let it affect your willpower cultivation. At the higher levels, both might be similarly powerful, but cultural researchers are clearly the more mysterious and magical ones. In a frontal confrontation, a warrior and a cultural researcher can be evenly matched, but if it's not a frontal confrontation, a Skysoar cultural researcher can even kill a Cloud Breach warrior through an ambush. On the battlefield, cultural researchers are always shrouded in mystery. Su Yu nodded. Having said that, Liu Wenyan sank into silence. Not far away, the other students were reluctantly saying their farewells to their parents. Of course, there were also some students who were filled with excitement. Many of them had never left Nenyuan before. Thus, they were filled with expectations toward the bustling and flourishing metropolis that was the capital. It was still too early for them to actually feel homesick. Perhaps they would only start missing home after some time in the capital. A short while later, Xia Bing and the Martial Dragon Guards arrived. Apart from the Martial Dragon Guards, there were 100 city guards around as well. In total, 110 of them would be in charge of this escort mission. There were roughly 200 students to be escorted. These were all the students that had been accepted by the various war and cultural research academies. As for the internal affairs and scientific research students, they would travel separately under escort of a different team of city guards. The difference in treatment between the two was obvious since the other group wasn't escorted by the Martial Dragon Guards. This was how reality worked. The cultural research and war academies were in charge of nurturing experts. Thus, more importance was placed on their students. Furthermore, the other two academies had a lot more students. There were over 1,000 of them. The second group would probably encounter less danger since the Myriad race cult would not be bothered to do anything to these regular students. They would sacrifice a lot for little gains, so it was hardly worth their time. Xia Bing started walking toward the square. He was personally leading the escort. Even the city guards were placed under his command. After exchanging a few words with the principal, Xia Bing walked up to Liu Wenyan. He sternly said, "Instructor Liu, we're taking off. There has been a lot of chaos recently. There is disorder in the various cities while chaos reigns in the wilderness. With the city guards and martial dragon guards away, some of those rats will stir. Nanyuan will be in your care while we're gone, Instructor Liu." With the departure of a Skysoar expert, the martial dragon guards and the city guards, the city's defenses were at their weakest. Liu Wenyan nodded. "They'd better show up. I've been lacking merit points recently. You guys should be careful as well. This is the time each year when the wilderness is the most chaotic. Some cult members might even try to induce a beast wave or two. Don't get trapped." "I will," Xia Bing promised solemnly. He was an experienced soldier. He naturally was aware of all that. As the two Skysoar experts conversed, about a dozen trucks appeared outside the school gate. Chapter 110. Departure to Nanyuan Secondary School. The principal lamented, "Yet another batch of students has left for the capital." Sigh. Year after year, a large number of Nanyuan students traveled to the capital. But the result was that some would die, some would be crippled, some would become citizens of the capital, and some would give up on cultivation. Very few of these Nanyuan students would actually rise to prominence. Batch after batch of ambitious and lively students had been sent to the capital, and batch after batch of students had sunk into depression or given up on their ambitions. The principal was already numb to that, but he still couldn't help feeling helpless. Liu Wenyan looked at the departing vehicles and calmly said, "This is their path, a path they must experience in life. Ultimately, very few would be able to go far on this path. People like you are all the losers of this path." The principal did not remark on that. Instead, he asked, "Are you really not returning to the academy?" "Suyu has left. I doubt you have taught a student so outstanding before. As for the upcoming students, I'm afraid they won't even be as good as Li Yu and the others. It is a waste for a Skysoar cultural researcher like you. There is no rush. I haven't finished forging my body. In the meantime, it makes no difference where I stay." The principal curiously asked, "What blood are you using to forge your body?" Liu Wenyan had not applied for any blood essence from him. Where was this fellow getting his blood essence? Why must I use blood essence? I can rely on myself. Liu Wenyan spoke with a carefree tone. "How can us cultural researchers forge our body with blood essence? Source chi alone is enough." The principal was suspicious. Was this fellow telling the truth? Forging body with source chi? Was he serious? "Old lie. I heard that a woman visited you not long ago. She doesn't look like a local bullshit." Liu Wenyan raged. "Who's spreading lies? I, Liu Wenyan, am a pure and outright man. How can I let a woman enter my home?" When the principal saw that old Liu was getting angry, he stopped asking. However, he couldn't help feeling curious about old Liu. That old fellow was actually not asking for any blood essence from him. Could that visitor perhaps be here for blood essence delivery? If she wasn't a local, she was most likely someone from the capital. "Old Liu, how many of these students do you think can reach the Skysoar realm in the future?" "It's hard to say." Liu Wenyan was relieved to see the principal changing the topic. He sighed and said, "We can celebrate if there are 3 to 5 of them. In truth, we're lucky if even 1 or 2 of them can reach that realm, and if we exclude Suyu, I'm really not sure if even one of them can become a Skysoar cultivator." Over the years, batch after batch of students had been sent to the capital. Very few of them were able to reach the Skysoar realm. He arrived in Nanyuan over 40 years ago. He had also educated over 40 batches of students. Of these students, over 200 of them managed to enter the Great Xia Cultural Research Academy. Less than 5 had graduated. The Great Xia Cultural Research Academy would accept nearly 2,000 new students each year. In contrast, only about 50 students would graduate each year. Basically, only 1 out of 40 students could graduate. And the rate would be even lower if only the Nanyuan students were taken into consideration. Over the past 40 years, only 3 of them had managed to reach the Skysoar realm. In truth, that wasn't even considered a small number for a place like Nanyuan. 1 of them had perished on the battlefield. 1 was holding a leadership position in the army, while 1 was staying in the academy as a teaching assistant. That teaching assistant had been stuck at the Skysoar realm for decades. Clearly, he could no longer go further. Not a single true genius had appeared from Nanyuan before. For a place like Nanyuan, the Skysoar realm was an unreachable height. But at the capital, a Skysoar cultivator was nothing special. The parents were no longer visible. The familiar streets were gradually left behind. Some were sad, some were excited. The seats in the crude trucks were small. The passengers were forced to sit perfectly straight at all times. After a while, someone finally couldn't take the silence anymore. From the front of the truck, Zhou Chong turned around to look at Chen Hao with a look of provocation. He said, "Chen Hao, I heard the Martial Dragon War Academy is near the Great Xia War Academy. When you see me in the future, be sure to not tell anyone that we used to be schoolmates." Chen Hao looked up at Zhou Chong and seriously said, "That is only natural. I won't be able to take that humiliation. You can't even beat a girl. Remember to pretend you don't know me in the capital." Soft laughter rang out. Zhou Chong's face turned red as he angrily said, "Who says I can't beat a girl? I merely disdained fighting a girl. I don't believe you." Chen Hao shook his head and said, "Unless you can prove yourself, we do have some girls in this truck." The girls looked at the two with disdain. Two idiots. Zhou Chong was also feeling rather gloomy. Did this fellow not understand the meaning behind his words? He was a Great Xia War Academy student, while Chen Hao would be a Martial Dragon War Academy. Wasn't it obvious that he was superior to Chen Hao? With the two bickering against each other, the mood in the truck became lighter. Beside Su Yu, a petite girl looked at him and softly asked, "Student Su Yu, have you reached the 9th stage source opening realm?" Su Yu nodded. He didn't know this girl. He could not recall seeing her before either. She was probably a student of a different secondary school. After all, there were other secondary schools in Nanyuan. The Nanyuan Secondary School was merely the biggest and most reputable one. 9th stage source opening realm? That's amazing. The girl praised enviously. She said, "I heard you place first for both the war and cultural research exams. Why did you choose to enter the Cultural Research Academy?" "I love reading." Su Yu smiled and gave a perfunctory answer. The girl found nothing wrong with that answer. She said regretfully, "What a pity. With your cultivation you can definitely reach the great strength and the infinite strength realms soon after entering a war academy. I heard that the cultural research academies don't care about cultivation. It's fine. I can still contribute to humanity from behind the front line." A lot of the students had been paying attention to Su Yu. At that time, a short-haired boy said, "Su Yu, I heard that you offended the people from the capital during the exam. Won't they target you when you're there?" A lot of people looked over, anticipating Su Yu's answer. A few of the genius students from the capital were screwed over badly by Su Yu during the examination. Would they take revenge on him? Su Yu smiled. "I doubt so. It's merely a small argument. There is no need for them to go that far." With Chen Hao and Zhou Chong taking the lead, the students started talking among themselves. They were filled with longing for the capital. That was Great Xia's seat of power, a place filled with experts and opportunities. Su Yu merely listened to the conversation silently, while remaining relatively silent. In fact, most of the cultural research students were behaving similarly. They only listened silently. The War Academy students were more active, talking about some rumors they heard in excitement. On a convertible truck, Xia Bing was wiping his saber while cautiously observing his surroundings. At this moment, the convoy had left the city. The roads were in good condition, but they were still near the city. The roads further ahead would be in less ideal condition. There was a distance of about 1,500 kilometers between Nanyuan and the capital. Nanyuan was basically located at the border of Great Xia. If they could travel unobstructed, they could reach the capital in a day. But unfortunately, that was not how travel in this era worked. More often than not, these long-distance convoys would encounter situations where the road was damaged halfway, forcing them to stop and readjust or even abandon their vehicles. They had set off a few days earlier precisely to account for any unexpected incidents. Besides, Xia Bing, the 100-man commander of the city guards, looked at him with admiration and said, "Sir, why don't you go get some rest?" "Just let the city guards keep watch. It's fine." Xia Bing looked around and exhaled. "Prioritize truck 1, but don't forget to keep an eye on the other trucks as well. Make sure nobody falls behind. This is the time of the year where chaos would frequently erupt in the wilderness. It never hurts to be careful." The commander nodded solemnly and said, In the past years, the other cities are the ones suffering from the chaos. Nanyuan's convoys have rarely encountered any trouble. Xia Bing did not say anything. The student convoys of the other students would frequently be attacked, while the same rarely happened to Nanyuan's convoys. That was the truth. Why? Because Nanyuan students were weak and were not high-value targets. In the other cities, there were plenty of students at the 7th stage source opening realm and above. Often, killing one of such students would grant the cult members more contribution than eliminating the entire Nanyuan convoy. But that wasn't the case this year, Xia Bing said with an overcast tone. Just be careful. It's different this year. All of the high-tier students are priority targets of the cult. This year, we have one such student in the convoy. The commander sank into silence. It had been many years since a high-tier student had appeared in anyone. This year, someone with high-tier evaluation for 2 examinations had appeared. This would indeed be troublesome. After all, high-tier students could be considered geniuses, even in the capital. These geniuses were hard to kill in the capital. But what about Nanyuan? In fact, Suyu was the main reason why a Skysoar expert and the Martial Dragon Guards were involved in this escort mission this year. In the former years, these escort missions would mostly be led by an infinite strength commander from the city guards. Suyu was unaware of that. He still thought that this was just a normal escort mission. In truth, the Martial Dragon Guards stationed in Nanyuan were in charge of the entire city's security, not the security of a mere student convoy. They wouldn't leave the city lightly. After a short silence, the commander softly said, "The other cities have high-tier students as well, while we only have Suyu." Sir, the cult had suffered gravely in Nanyuan not long ago. Will they still come? Xia Bing berated. Do not put your hope on luck. Regardless of whether the cult is coming or not, you still need to be on high alert. Notify the men to keep watchful eyes at all times. Our main goal is to safely escort the genius student to the capital. Obey your orders. Roger. The commander immediately passed on the order to the rest of the crew through the intercom. Their main mission was to escort the 200 students to the capital. But among the students was a special existence called Suyu. As a high-tier student in critical moments, the city guards and the Martial Dragon Guards would prioritize him. Only after ensuring his security would they focus on the other students. This was the special treatment of high-tier students, and from that, one could see just how important high-tier students were. It had been many years since a high-tier student had emerged from Nanyuan. After about 400 kilometers, we will reach Tianshui City. There, we can get in touch with the city and ask if we can join their convoy to the capital. If we can link up, we can better ensure the security of the convoy. Xia Bing paused to check the time before saying, if everything goes smoothly, we can reach Tianshui's borders in 5 hours. Have the men be on high alert during this period of time. Roger, continue keeping watch here. Xia Bing then rose into the air. The others looked on enviously until Xia Bing landed on a different truck. Only then did they withdraw their gazes. That's it for today's video. The next part arrives tomorrow. Subscribe so you don't miss it.